Welcome to BONZAI Podcast. I'm Karyna, your host today. My guest is Doug Shannon, Global Intelligent Automation Leader. Today, we are going to discuss the future of generative AI in business. Since ChatGPT's launch in November 2022, it has received widespread attention in the media, and companies are eager to learn more and leverage this opportunity and tool and their potential. A couple days ago, I read the article, How to Automate Household Chores with ChatGPT. For example, you can personalize your meal suggestions, your grocery lists, you can manage home maintenance and repairs by using some outcomes from ChatGPT, for example, cleaning schedule. So I definitely agree that generative AI is a tool that can help us to increase productivity. GPT and many other models, foundation models, are helpful. And today, together with Doug, we will discuss what application Gen AI has in business, how it can help business leaders to make strategic decisions. We will discuss how to manage human capital in the era of Gen AI, and of course, the future of generative AI. Doug, how are you personally involved in creating the future with AI? Please introduce yourself and share with our audience your AI experience.
Certainly, yeah. So, Karyna, thanks for having me on. Doug Shannon. Have 20 years of overall IT experience. Over many years now of doing automation, RPA, intelligent automation, and now AI, and driving that in within the different organizations that I've supported in the past, and then all the work that I do, be it online and everything else. So, yeah. So in general, AI is driving many different aspects of the business. Like you said, it came out November 30th of 2022. We're coming on to that 1 year time frame, real close. I always know that date because it's actually my birthday, so it's really easy to remember.
Oh.
Yeah. So it came out, and I was like, hey, this is great. I'm gonna check this out. It's like a birthday present to go learn this. So and where AI is driven in business, just like you said, like you're seeing AI everywhere. We're seeing thousands of business within this last year being spun up and driving new changes and new ways to look at things. Just like you read the article about how household chores, there's an article right now about Amazon, how they're redoing their marketplace. So all those pictures of those toasters or those blenders that were on like a white background, now they're using AI to generate the image behind it to show an extravagant kitchen and put in place to give it some more insight and to make it more of like a marketplace. And it's very exciting to see how not only just AI, Gen AI, and the multimodal capabilities have been able to drive this whole market.
Definitely, it has a very huge potential and it's evolving very fast with a big pace. So let's start our discussion with generative AI and its application for business context. In which business processes it's already been actively used, and how do you see the nearest future of generative AI for business?
So for business, it's interesting because originally we had AI that was controlled by academics and really kind of being brought out, and then built on top of that, kind of like the chicken before the egg. But in this case, it's like the egg was AI, and now we have Gen AI, which is this new chicken that changes its plumage and its feathers every day. Because it changes so fast. So, but in general, for business, we're seeing, again, like new aspects. Right now, some of the use cases, the most common ones you'll hear about with the Gen AI aspect is like building in knowledge bases, building in contextual searches, having, generative, context, search within like a chat, for example. So if you chat, it has word search and semantic search to be able to say like, where is this? What does this mean? What's the definition of the nuance behind it? And that's some of the big ones that people are doing now. However, there's also just the benefits of, new hire onboarding, like understanding a process. But to do that, a lot of people say, oh, there's hallucinations and you have to be careful with that. But even in like with Gen AI, hallucinations is part of the product. It was created with it. And so, but it's very easily controlled if you have the right grounding so that you can actually say, like, here's our HR process, here is all the documentation, here's our HR handbook for this country or this other country, or just overall for the company's employees that are in there. And then you point that semantic search, you point that, the different verticals of what that is looking for. You say, this is what you're searching off of, and this is what you're going to get back. So that grounding ensures that there's not really going to be much, if any, hallucination, so that the answer is going to be more correct. So that's a big way, is like bringing on onboarding. And then there's other things like, corporate setup, even doing scripting, right? So all your developers have the ability to now say, hey, this is how we normally develop. This is like .NET, VB, C, Python, and then it becomes a lot easier. So you can actually build in, a normal cadence with your developers and say, hey, this is the prompts that we use to really do develop in the same way. And this is how we actually have AI kind of code check some of our stuff. It may not, you don't want to use it 100% of the time. You don't want to trust it 100% of the time yet, but it can do a lot of that tedious work. A lot of the stuff that I see out in the markets, just people in general, they're diving into saying, hey, as a developer, as a person that is in this field, I can now do a lot of it myself. And so I don't need a team. If I was a self-made developer or a game designer and I needed to test this or run my GitHub or run like the DevOps side of this and really tier that out instead of in using some of the different tools that are there, I don't need like these certain individuals to go run these things. I can have an AI, Gen AI, or an automation, like an autonomous agent to actually drive some of these efforts.
Yeah, you provided a good example of coding, and I know that the Copilot of GitHub, for example, it uses generative AI. And also there are a lot of different good examples in different industries, such as, for example, Uber can automate and adjust their traffic routes based on generative AI outcomes. And Duolingo, for example, this is application for learning new languages, and they use generative AI to create tailor-made learning paths for their users. So let's deeper discuss your examples on how businesses can use in different industries Gen AI.
Yeah. So what I'm seeing is, so I'm big in the automation space, and that's usually my main go-to since I'm an expert in that field. And I'm using automation to actually drive the AI usage. So, Gen AI right now, you prompt it, you have to know what you're kind of prompting. It helps to have the same kind of prompting every time. And it helps to answer a lot of the nuanced questions that humans normally answer already. So essentially in the automation side of the fence, we've always been looking as a market of AI or automation people have been looking at like how to do intelligent automation better. And a lot of times it's built out to say, well, let's build in human in the loop activities. Let's build out as much automation as we can, and then involve the human where we need to. Let them do the answer, let them do the check, say yes, no, maybe so, and then move on and then run the next part of that automation. So essentially what we're able to do now is, since automation is already enterprise ready, since automation already runs on rails, so to say, has very intricate audit controls and driven and handles a lot of your core applications anyway, because most companies that are doing automation are seeing the wins with it. So why not use LLMs and Gen AI in that aspect and say, okay, I'm going to run this automation. Well, this automation starts off by maybe a chatbot kicking off a question from a user, and then that user's question back says, hey, do you want to run one of these 3 different reports? And it's like, oh, great. Like, those reports ready? Cool. I want to run this. Well, then as soon as it prompts to run those reports, it could come back and say, well, what are the variables? Like, do you want to run it? You're going to run it as yourself. What are those options? What kind of what's the location code, or what's the, company for this, and what date range do you want to run? And then once it has that, it feeds that back to the automation. The automation can then run with that and then actually provide that report back to that user. So not only do you know when it ran, who ran it, and how did it run, you get the result, and it's every time the same prompts, the same things. And so it can be very auditable, very governed, and it makes it much easier for that solution of like, how do we put this all together, right? And and businesses all around the world right now, and enterprises are saying, we want AI, we want Gen AI, we want to drive this. How do we bring that in? And my answer is always going to be, at least at the moment, is do it with your automation, because your automation has that ability.
Generative AI can also help us to make strategic decisions. For example, with usage of generative AI, we can generate new ideas, we can compare some insights, we can get some analytics, for example, like comparing what is going on the market compared to different competitors and information that we have about them. It definitely can help business leaders in their decisions making. But at the same time, as you mentioned before, generative AI has some hallucination issues. It can be biased. And if it's not trained on the right data, it can provide also not reliable information. So, summarizing everything that I said, what would be your recommendations for business leaders, how they can use generative AI for decision-making process?
Yeah. So for business leaders, the biggest thing that takes a lot of time is really just thinking or getting it out of your own head. So even myself, right, as a leader in the automation space, I use Gen AI to ask myself questions. And so sometimes, or I'll see something online. I'm like, hey, they're asking a question like this, but what is it? Was it really? What is this question? So I'll ask myself, and then I'll answer it, and then it helps me to get some of those ideas out. Same way like a CIO or a CEO would say, this is what I'm seeing in the space, and trying to just like brainstorm, right? So a lot of us don't have a lot of people we probably can reach out to brainstorm with or to say our ideas. And sometimes it may be hard because we don't want to sound like we're wrong all the time. This is why I mentioned some of the stuff that I talk about is like being in more of a brave space than a safe space. Brave spaces are to be brave, to be kind of bold, to be out there and be able to say like, hey, I may be wrong, but I'm going to talk about this subject and let's have a discussion, not a conversation or accusationary situation. It's more of like, how can I say one thing that I'm trying to gain context or concept of, and then we have a conversation what that looks like. Same thing with AI and Gen AI. You're able to actually ask these questions. A lot of the times, even there's a lot of tools out there, like we mentioned, that there's so many that have come out. There's ones that help you with PowerPoint. I have an idea of a certain message or something I want to drive and something I want to build a PowerPoint about, and it'll give you a good outline to kind of run off of, and then the creative juices start flowing. You're like, hey, I want to do it in this way, or I'll take that and maybe cut it into pieces and do it another way. So I think AI for business is really getting us a good like 50 to even sometimes even 70% on the way there to getting that idea out, to formulating it, and to having a better understanding. I think some of the other big areas that I've talked about recently is like in a mentor-mentee relationship. Sometimes we have different cultural backgrounds. Sometimes we have our own biases, and sometimes we just don't know how to communicate in the same way. Just like you do with, a help desk worker talking to like a executive level, they don't speak the same language in some regards, or at least business language. But when you use AI and Gen AI, you have the ability to formulate those questions in a way that may make more sense, or you may be able to get really the question that you had, it may come out in a much cleaner, better way that is taken better or understood better. And so a lot of those hurdles that were in the way with language barriers or cultural barriers or just biases can be kind of eroded if we use this as like an assistant, or use this as a autonomous agent that will work with us, and a co-pilot, a way to be that interface for us so that we can make sure we're not having those. I think they quoted, there was like a news story, like there's like 50 biases we all carry with us every day. So like we need to be aware of that. And nobody's perfect. And so nobody should be perfect. That's not the human way. Right. So I think overall it's, I think even going to teams that are using, Gen AI, teams that are building this inside enterprises, you have to understand you're going to get it wrong. Like hands down, it's going to be wrong the first one or two times. It is a trial by fire in a way. It is a test as you go, but be very careful what you're doing, because there's still the government mandates, the governance that overall controls all this. There's a lot of unknown factors. There's things that we can talk about, like not just hallucinations, but hypnotization of the LLM and prompt injections and whatnot. So there's a lot of things that people still are unaware of. And so that's where, podcasts like this, and then us talking about it, or different groups that are out there, organizations or councils, those are the people that are always talking about it. So people should get dialed into those and then get really the right information.
Yes, yes, right. You raised here so many valid points, like starting from the relationship between mentor and mentee when they have cultural difference. The same way, like we can adjust the style of a conversation. For example, when we want to reach out some business users, but we like, I don't know, student just graduated from the university and we don't know how to write the right business email. So use ChatGPT and it will help you to make it. And these are autonomous agents, Copilot, and your example with the presentations. I did it just a couple of days ago with Copilot from Microsoft Power, from Google PowerPoint. Like I just added some ideas on what about I would like to generate the slides, and it gave me back a quite a good, well-structured slides. I needed just add necessary information there, but the structure, it's already there. I didn't need to think about this base. And issues such as hallucination, biases that can be in models. As you said at the start, it's a part of these tools, and we just need to apply our human intelligence, our critical thinking, sometimes even Socratic methods like ask questions, challenge this decision, try to understand for yourself if it's reliable information, get some insights from sources like different tools. They can have also references where they took this information, or with additional prompts, we can extract this information even from ChatGPT answers. So we should use these tools, but always think critically. And the same way for leaders, business leaders, to get some insights, strategical decisions from this tool, we still need to validate the answers. We don't need to take it as it is, like as we got it from ChatGPT or any other generative AIs. We need to be sure that we can rely on this information before we present it to someone. Great. Again, generative AI is developing with a rapid pace, and it takes over our repetitive, boring tasks, allow us to focus mostly on results and apply our human qualities to make decisions, to use it at work, in our personal life, to increase the productivity. Some people, they are afraid about AI, that it will take over their jobs. Some, in the contrary, they actively use it and increase their productivity with such tools. So what are your advice for leaders who are managing human capital in era of generative AI?
I think the quick one would be to talk to a lot of people look to like replace people, right? And a lot of people are worried about being replaced. In that aspect, I would look to say the normal thing that I kind of look at, I kind of flip that on the other side and say, instead of hiring people, it's basically it's don't fire, it's not hire, is essentially the way I look at it. So what that means though is if you break it down is instead of looking to replace FTEs, instead of looking to replace people with these things, then what you do is anybody that comes to you, which is perfectly fine, because most of the time inside of a business, you have people saying, hey, I need bodies. I need people. We're behind. We can't keep up. We need to hire 4 more people, that kind of situation. Those are the same situations that I say that should be coming to your automation team, that should be coming to your AI teams, or if you've combined them or not, and say like, instead of hiring people just to get the work done, why don't we go look to see if we can't automate or use AI in some way to really drive that down so that the people that are there have more time, aren't really behind the stacks of paperwork that they need to do. If you can automate that to a point, then again, those people that are in those jobs are invaluable. They understand the job, they understand the need, they become the experts, they become the more efficient, they start to love their job more because they're not stuck doing all this thing. Because when you hire more people, there's so much depth there. There's training, there's driving the understanding, there's like looking at the career path of that person, because like everybody wants to go somewhere, right? And if you don't have a career path, that's still going to add to your attrition. So going back to it's don't fire, not hire. It's not that you're also not hiring people. It's the fact that you're not hiring people just to replace or to add bodies to the teams or the organization. You're hiring the people that are going to come in and actually drive some kind of effort or some new area of business that's going to provide more ROI, more business need, or provide roles that your customers are requiring of you for quality or just an assessment, right? So there's that fact, but then on the business side and leadership side, there's how do you talk to the people? How do you drive that within your business? And what I've built out and what I use in my daily life and business life is I call it the ACT model, and it's ACT, which is alignment, clarity, and transparency. So essentially, you're aligning with your overall goals. You can even say it's like say if it's like an OKR, right? So you're aligning on your OKR. And you're saying, this is our goal for the business. This is where we want to hit. This is where we want to be in the next year. How are we going to get there? So then your clarity is like your KPIs. You're like, how are we going to require the business units to drive their efforts to get to the point where we can actually hit this OKR and actually drive that business goal forward? And so that clarity provides not just nuance and clarity to understanding what the business is thinking and what the management's thinking, but both have a good idea of like what the overall goal is, and they're driving towards that. And the transparency layer is all of those teams and all those people, or just in a general conversation like this, is like having transparency and saying, we've aligned on the overall, alignment. We got the clarity down because we understand what each person's thinking. Now the transparency is, how are we going to, like, as we're moving through this and running these down and finishing these KPIs or finishing this, an overall conversation and drive, do we have, like, are we showing integrity? Are we showing value? And then if we are, we see that, both parties see that, all the teams see that. So then that builds in trust. And so when that comes back up, that transparency comes back up to the alignment and said, look, we did what we said we were going to do with transparency. We finished that KPI. We did those things. The team did everything they needed to do. Now we're aligning again. And then at that alignment stage, now we're going to go build that overall, build the clarity and overall build the alignment of like that OKR to say like, look, we hit the target. Now what happens, right? Do we just go build the next one or what goes on there? So really, the classic approach that some managers use where they say, hey, don't give me, issues, give me solutions. That doesn't always work either, because that's not an alignment clarity. There's no clarity in that alignment. You're just asking for the result. And again, just like we said with AGI, not AGI, but Gen AI, which eventually will be AGI. We'll talk about that in a little bit probably. In general, the aspect there is that you're asking for a solution, and they quote unquote like don't want people to complain, but like if you're just asking for a solution, those people may not have the answer, or they may not have the way to communicate that answer. However, Gen AI may actually help them to generate that answer, because again, it helps bridge those conversations. But again, we shouldn't be asking people to come with solutions anyway. So it doesn't really work. It doesn't make the environment a good place. But the ACT model does work. I even jokingly say like, hey, it's like getting your act together, like use ACT to drive that business value, to drive that business conversation, so people can actually be more aligned with what's going on.
ACT, yeah, great approach. And it's actually very thoughtful to have a clearance, to have a clarity, to have a transparency and alignment within the team, to clearly communicate all the goals. And I like your idea about that we don't need just to ask for results, but ACT can help also business users to drive the communication and results within the teams. All right. So last question, and it's actually our headline of the conversation, future of generative AI in business. What are your thoughts on generative AI in upcoming 5-10 years for business?
Yeah, I mean, everything starts with where you are now, right? And so we've seen how business has worked over the years. We've seen how, we've done different things. Like there was like the .com, and then there was like all the different integrations, and then the world being integrated into that, and everybody coming online, and then we have like Internet of Things and things coming online, right? And how to drive that, and then there's everything comes in like processes and flows, and as things go, but things are moving so fast now, right? So IoT is coming back, edge computing is very apparent, cloud is being pushed for everything. It's safe and not safe in some ways, but hey, mostly safe. And in general, with all of these different technologies, with automation and Gen AI really coming in to kind of add a little bit of that extra glue and that nuance in there, we're seeing, I do see the future, the near future is combining it all together. So the autonomous enterprise is the new coming future. It's where everything comes into play. It's where we have our IoT devices talking to our Gen AI. It's where the Gen AI and the automation are working together to drive business efficiency, drive where it's going, understand where it's going, because the Gen AI can take those same runs, run it itself, or run it as we need it to generate the impact and understand. So data-driven development that we've all been trying to get to, DevOps that we've all been trying to do correctly for years, is all starting to look like we can actually do some of that nuance. Because at the end of the day, as humans, we're not very good at documenting stuff. We don't want to. We just, it gets away from us because we get tasked with so many different things. So automation comes in to alleviate some of those many different manual things and kind of bridge those gaps and control and help understand how our core systems are working and build the governance and the safety nets there. AI comes in to help us understand all of that. So then AI in the future isn't just this Gen AI and all these other AI terms. It's not even just AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, where a lot of people say that it's going, and it very well could. But I think the overall way to view AI as it is and where it's going is it's an interface. If we consider it an interface, it's an easier way to understand it. So I would interact with my AI, Gen AI, whatever we want to call it, just like I would talking to like you, Karyna, and saying like, hey, I want to do these things. I want to understand these aspects of this report or this aspect of the business. How do I look at this? And I would like to have a graph, and it kind of tries to figure out what I want. And I'm like, well, that's not quite right. Let's do it this way. So the same way we have those conversations right now with like BAs, or we have this conversation with our developers, it's all going to be part of this interface. And just like things are developed, it'll be iterated and over time, iterated again, and it gets better and better to the point where you say, well, that's great. Maybe we use general adversarial networks to overall like work on a really hard problem and say, okay, now go throw that over there and have the networks and the AIs like work together to find a better way to present this. But there's the general data. So there's lots of different options. But the very far future, if I wanted to give people like an aspect of where, if I was just to throw, smoke up and throw some stable diffusion and try to imagine what the future looks like, is as a human race, we've all seen like sci-fi shows, and we've all come to different things, but the most common thing ever done, and the things that we usually go create as humans, is like stuff from like Star Trek, right? And so people have talked about this, but I'll go a little bit in a deeper aspect of it. So if you have like your bridge crew, right, and say this bridge crew is your overall working different business units inside of a company, and you have like your leaders that are like your CXO suite with your captain, your first lieutenant and whatnot, and you have your security guys and like your people that are driving the ship. Everybody has different roles, right? So the different roles, they're visually different roles because of like the suits that they wear. We're not going to be wearing suits like that, but in general, they have different roles and permissions that they have available to them. So they do use a communication device on their chest that they can hit and then interact with that interface being the AI of whatever we want to call it at that time. But it knows by voice, it knows by location, it knows by biometrics, like who this person is and who their roles and what their permissions are. And so in that fact, if AI is the interface and it knows who this person is, different people, just like in different organizations or in different finance, HR, and IT groups, have different roles and permissions. So in that, a captain, for example, or a CXO suite can do much more different things and may have different asks and have different autonomous agents that understand what their needs are, versus like the security guy behind the console there that has other rights or permissions, but doesn't have the same rights as the other one. So all of those autonomous agents and all those different ways of looking at it can be very much controlled, but it all starts with, let's go define it. Let's use things like automation, define our enterprise, define our user groups, define what we're doing. The more we automate, the more we're going to have all of those different aspects for that AI can pull in to then drive the overall autonomous enterprise, to drive the overall future of where this is all going. I mean, we all do software one way, shape, or form or another. It's all software. It's a very digital world. We started off 20 years ago saying, let's be more computer savvy. Now it's time to be more digital savvy. And that's the future.
Honestly, I believe in your story that this is our nearest future, because even if to consider the development of GPT model, we used previously only chats, and right now with GPT-4 and GPT-4 Vision, we can communicate like uploading pictures, get some insight from this picture. We can upload some voice records and get back answers with a voice. So it's developing. It's just a question of interfaces. Maybe in the future it will be embedded in some glasses, in some, I don't know, our even, I don't know, clothes, anything which is close to us, and we can interact faster. Even we don't need our, for example, mobile phone or laptop to execute some commands. And about autonomous agents, it's also interesting how it can help not just to get some insights, but generate some tasks, split the information outcomes from reply of Gen AI models to some small tasks that could be performed. Like if I would like to search for the recipe, I can also ask automatically to add all the necessary groceries to my grocery list application. It's the easiest way that I could imagine, like in my daily life. But overall, for enterprises, it can be a bigger even automation, when with autonomous agent we can generate more tasks and simplify our daily work and focus on what is the most important for us to make intelligent decisions and generate a new layer of processes, of calculations, logics, and so on. Apply, as I said before, our real human qualities to together in collaboration with generative AI, make our future better. So, Doug, thank you so much for being with us today. It was a very insightful communication, and I hope that our audience will find it also useful for them. And don't afraid to use generative AI. Try it, apply some critical thinking, and use it power. So, thank you.
Thank you.